What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Dribble here. This next episode of Project Nemo Engine Swap, I try to diagnose and try to fix what's ailing Nemo. As I discussed at the end of last episode, Nemo was really down on power, running rough, and even blowing some black smoke out the tailpipe. I was able to limp him home and tried a couple things to see if I could get it cleared up, but to no avail. Threw my trusty code reader onto the truck. I got some really weird codes, nothing I've really seen before, and wasn't really sure what to do. So I got to thinking about the engine swap. I put Dory's engine and wiring harness into Nemo and I plugged everything in. And I was having some weird kind of cryptic emissions codes. I thought, well, maybe something's not playing nice with the wiring harness. So I decided to take the wiring harness off the 98's engine and put it back on the 98 truck, see if I can get everything to communicate and talk correctly, and see if we can't clear up this running rich issue and this emissions problem. So without further ado, let's get to it. All right, so here's where we are. I'm gonna have to get my chain hoist thing off of here. Start digging through, getting all the wiring loom off of here. Starting from the front of the engine, we've got the wiring loom going underneath the plenum here. Branches out to a temperature sensor, intake tube sensor, throttle position sensor, idle air control valve, and this PVC, PCV, something. Inside here is the fuel line. We've got to the outside of the plenum, underneath is the alternator and mass airflow sensor connector. There's a cat. On top here we have the coil pack connections. That bolts underneath the coil pack. This goes to the coil pack. And then the loom that includes the coil packs include the fuel injectors. And underneath here is a vacuum line as well. This goes up to another vacuum actuator connector, and then there's a green and a red goes to that, green on top. There's the vacuum line that goes around to the side here that gets likely goes to the vacuum reservoir. This one goes to the fuel pressure regulator. Here's the main trunk connections for the ECU and for the body harness to the engine. Vacuum lines coming around here to the EGR valve. One goes down, the other one goes, the green one goes to the EGR, the tan one goes down to the body harness. O2 sensor back here, and then this goes down to the transmission connections. So, and then the cam shaft position sensor clicks into right here, and then the oil pressure sensor is right there. Anyway, I think I may be able to get that middle fuel injector in there. It's going to be the one that I'm not going to be able to get to, I imagine. So I really would like to get this harness off without taking the plenum off, but I don't know if that's going to happen. But all these route pretty straightforward. The only thing underneath the plenum is the fuel injector, and then the stuff for the throttle intake. Everything else goes to the outside of the plenum. Alright, so there we go. Wasn't too bad to take apart. Of course, the engine's completely out, making that easy. This would have been a lot easier while I had both engines out.
Duh.
So, fuel injectors goes up to the throttle intake and temperature sensors. Main body harness to engine, O2, transmission, cam position, oil, O2, ECM, little vacuum canister, vacuum actuator, something, fuel injectors, coil pack, crankshaft position sensor, alternator, and mass airflow sensor. It turns out I did not need to take that vacuum system out, and I was able to get the fuel injector, this middle plug, out with some screwdrivers and coming at it from both sides. It was not easy. This is going to be very difficult getting this out of the engine in Nemo right now, because obviously all the hoses, everything, absolutely everything is in the way now. So this is going to be very cumbersome. Obviously the firewall is right here, and I've got to get underneath the truck and get everything unclipped from the transmission again. So it's gonna be hard. It's gonna be difficult. So we're back at Nemo here. I'll take the hood off, I'll take the air intake off, disconnect the negative battery cable, get some of this stuff out of the way. I'm gonna unbolt my coil pack and kind of set it aside. I've got to get back behind the engine in order to get to the O2 sensors, and then all the way underneath the transmission, get the connections off the transmission, and then just kind of slowly work my way forward. Let's get to it. There she is. Wasn't terrible. Of course, it's always easy to pull wires away and out rather than trying to feed all these back in. So putting these all back together is going to be the biggest pain in the buns.
He's right. Do you know that?
One thing I did notice is the connector here for my, I guess it's the oil pressure sensor, is different than what I've got on the other harness. I'm gonna set these side by side and really kind of take a look at them. Everything else really looks the same, honestly. So I'm gonna bring the other one in here and start feeding it down into its locations after I kind of inspect if I can repin this or not. I'm gonna need to try to use this connector on that sensor, or take that sensor out of this block and take the one out of the other engine, which looks like this. So this is the type of sensor I have here. It's just a little, it's like just a pin, like a thread. It's not really a plug. So this wiring harness that I'm going to try to use has a plug, and I'm not exactly sure what to do there. So let me do some thinking. All right, so here is the wire in question. This just kind of slipped over the threads on that sensor on the back block of the engine. You can see that white connector right here. That's a plug-in style with a clip retaining. This just slipped over the end of it. This is a little torch because we were heating up the exhaust manifold bolt to get it off of the other engine. It's a green with white stripe wire. And same thing we got here. green with white stripe. So I'm going to try to figure out a way to get this connector onto the other wiring harness. If I have to cut and splice, I will do that. I am not ashamed to do stuff like that, so if it'll get my connector to work. Alright, so the surgery has been performed. I was able to tie these two wires in together. This one is a little thicker gauge than this one was. Hopefully that's not going to be a problem, but it probably will be. But so now that that connector has been swapped, this thing is ready to go back in, and here comes the fun part. Trying to get this to snake through underneath that plenum and then get plugged in. That's going to be the fun part. So everything's pretty straightforward. It just lays out pretty much right where every connector needs to be. This one's a little janky here. That's going to be a little bit tricky to try to figure that back out again, but let's snake the wires down to the transmission and then start getting it underneath the plenum, and then I can get this easier side kind of put in place. So let's do it. Wiring harness has been successfully swapped. Middle fuel injector directly in the center of that plenum was the hardest one to put back in. That's what took me the most time, was to put that connector in. All the rest of the connectors, everything went really smooth, everything clicked in except for that one back there. Obviously I had to switch out that connector. Other than that, it's all put back together. Nemo's original wiring harness is back on Nemo and is connected back into Nemo's computer, body harness, everything. Lord willing, this will fix the running rich issue I was having. Let's get that negative battery cable put back on, twist on the key, see if we got a running truck again. Fire in the hole. Took a second for it to find its idle, which they kind of did that before. So now that it's idle in here, I'm gonna go take it out for a drive. All right, driving around the shop for the second time. Test drive didn't go well. Really, nothing changed. Nemo's still running rich, still down on power, really bogs down when you try to give it any kind of acceleration. It'll sit there and idle okay, but you try to get out of first gear and into second gear, and it just loses pretty much all power. Great. So I did take Nemo for the test drive, and I didn't record any of it because, quite honestly, I was frustrated and I was just kind of done. So what's next? It's a 2000 engine with the 98 wiring harness, and everything else on the truck is original to the 98. So it's still running rich. I'm still having an issue with the emissions problem, and it's still throwing really kind of the same codes. So it turned out not being the wiring issue that I thought it was. So now that I know the problem is not the wiring, I'm going to start tackling some other issues that I think it might be. So I'm going to see if I can maybe clear it up the issue with some new O2 sensors, and if that doesn't work, then we'll just keep trying and chipping away at it till we get it. So that'll do it for this episode. I have to take a loss on this one. I'm not giving up. Keep troubleshooting, see if I can clear up this issue with Nemo and get this truck back on the road and running right like it's supposed to. So stay tuned for the next episode. Comment below. I'd like to hear what you guys think about this project so far. Once again, appreciate you guys watching. Hit that like switch on your way out. God bless, and we'll see you next time.